things that didn't work for me in my healing were visualization slash meditation exercises, EMDR, and pushing through the trauma and ignoring it in order to keep going. With visualization and meditation, these are two really good things for a lot of people, I've heard, but for me, I really struggled a lot with meditation and with visualization. And I think that the reason why is because I don't have a mind's eye. I can't see in my head. So doing these types of exercises for me is very stressful, actually. If I sit down to meditate and I have a trillion thoughts in my head, I can never make the thoughts stop. But I also can't visualize in my head either. So those two types of things aren't very helpful for me unless I'm doing a guided meditation where I'm just sitting and listening. And then as for EMDR, some of the reasons why that wasn't as helpful as it could have been are similar. Again, because I don't have a mind's eye. It's like when I'm being told by a therapist to picture something in my head and to tell them how it makes me feel, and I can't picture something in my head, I feel like I'm doing the whole exercise wrong, which is frustrating for me. So EMDR wasn't very helpful for me overall, though I did try and do it for a couple of years. I can't say it wasn't completely like helpless. I'm sure it helped in some regard. I just don't think overall it was the most helpful modality for me. And then the last thing that definitely did not help was pushing myself to continue going, not to keep going, not like, just keep going, not that kind of thing, but pushing myself to continue through things like school, work, social obligations, whatever, in the midst of trauma. Like when I was being traumatized, when trauma happened, what I really needed to do was to stop and to allow myself to process and to give myself space. But unfortunately, when trauma happens, the world is still turning and everything is still working and going. The world doesn't stop for your trauma. So with me, one of the times I was traumatized, I felt like there was no way I could stop and go to therapy and start healing and working on the things I needed to do because I was in the middle of school. I was working a job. I had teams I had to take care of. I just felt like I couldn't just stop and deal with it at that time. I would deal with it later. That is not something that worked for me, at least. You can't just keep pushing through something and ignoring it until it goes away because it won't go away, and it will make time for itself. So if you don't make time for your trauma and your trauma recovery, your trauma will make time for itself. So those three things were the main things that I noticed in my recovery, and my recovery is ongoing, but I've noticed that these are the least effective things for me.
The things that didn't work for me were sleeping, meditation, yoga, and journaling. The reason that sleeping didn't work for me was because I had a hard time divvying up my sleep schedule. I found that I was napping too frequently and it was taking away from my ability to do other things, to get outside and get fresh air. It took away from more of the self-care activities that did work for me. I tried to use it in a healthy way as like a little like rest and reset, but I felt that I kind of got consumed in it and it made me feel more depressed because I was sleeping too much. The reason that yoga didn't work for me, and so yoga is one of the things that I think works for me now, but didn't work for me at the beginning of my healing journey. And I think one of the things was that it was so hard for me to get in touch with my body and really ground myself. I was very dissociative when I first went through everything. So being in my body was so incredibly uncomfortable. And so I would go to yoga thinking that it would help me relax. And then I wouldn't be able to relax because I would be so focused on the fact that I couldn't feel in my body and feel grounded and present. And so I would have this internal struggle of like, I'm supposed to be relaxing. Why can't I relax? I don't want to be in my body. I need to be in my body. And it kind of made me feel more anxious originally. Like I said, now it is something that works for me. So it's kind of progressed over time, which I think a lot of kind of coping skills and healing tools can be like that, where it doesn't work for you at one point and it does work for you at another point. That's something that I found. Similarly with meditation, it was really hard for me to just shut my mind off. And I did a lot of guided meditations where I would be listening to people talk and kind of walking you through it, but my mind would race. And then I would get so fixed on the fact that my mind was racing that I wasn't able to actually relax and listen to what was being said. So I would do a lot of the same scripting in my mind of like, you need to focus, you need to relax. What are they saying? I don't remember what they just said. I'm not even paying attention. And then I would get frustrated with myself because it felt like I couldn't do it right. But meditation is another thing that does work for me now, because I've kind of learned that there's no wrong way to meditate. You can just kind of listen. And even if your mind is going, you're still retaining what's being said and you're still trying to make your body relax. But at first it was something that made me super anxious because I couldn't shut my mind off. And it drew more attention to the fact that my mind was racing than it would if I was busy doing something and distracting myself. And then journaling was hard for me, and still kind of is hard for me, because I find that I'm more of a creative writer. And when I write things in a creative way, that's very helpful for me when there's like a little bit of a disconnect. But when I started journaling, I was writing things very black and white and factual. And I was writing a lot about details of my trauma. And I wasn't doing the healing work that I needed to be doing to process what was happening. So I was just kind of regurgitating everything that happened and just re-triggering myself over and over again. And I think writing my details out, I got very consumed in the details, and it was something that would go through my mind all of the time. And then I would journal about it, and then it would bring up different things. And so I think journaling has been helpful when I'm doing it alongside a therapist and kind of writing and then working through that and processing that. But when I'm taking the information and really just getting fixed on what had happened and the details of it, and then I would dissociate because I was re-triggering myself while I was journaling. So I think the creative writing has definitely been helpful for me, and like writing poetry in a journal and kind of doing more like expressive writing has been super helpful. But journaling about the details and the feelings was something that was totally re-triggering to me.
I would just say if you're working on your healing, you're trying different things and you're struggling and you're seeing that some stuff's not working as well as maybe other people say it works, or it's just not working for you. I know this sounds super cheesy, but keep searching, because there's a bunch of things that help, but not all those things are helpful for everybody. So just because EMDR didn't work well for me, for example, doesn't mean it wouldn't work well for another survivor. EMDR is a very good modality for trauma recovery for a lot of people. It's just something I feel personally didn't help me. Same with meditation. Like tons of people love meditation, but I personally don't. So when it comes to your healing and your trauma recovery, this is one of the most important things that's going to happen in your life, is this time that you're spending recovering and getting better from the things that have happened to you. So don't give up. Just keep looking for a modality that is helpful. If you find a few things that kind of help, but maybe not so much, well, keep those in your toolbox, because that's something. Keep searching and do what works. As long as it's working a little bit, like that's something. And if you find something that works better, that's even better. So I know that it probably sounds easier said than done, but I'm one person that can attest that I did try things for years and years and years without a whole lot of success. And it gets frustrating when some people are saying, oh, this works for me, this works for me, this works for me, and none of those things are working for you, because you might internalize that and think, okay, well, what's wrong with me? Don't do that. It's not you. Not everything is meant to work for everybody. So just keep searching for what works for you. That's my advice to survivors.
So I think my best advice would be to not give up and to keep trying different things. I think it can get really frustrating when you're doing the things that your therapist is recommending and that other people are telling you to try and they're not working. But I think everyone has different things that work for them. And I think something that I've learned is that certain coping skills and certain tools work in different states of mind. So like the things that work for you when you're feeling depressed are not going to be the same things that work for you when you're feeling anxious. And so I think really just trying to get in tune with your body and keep trying different modalities until you find something that works. And I think the frustrating thing about healing is that something that works for you in the beginning might not work for you later down the road. And something that doesn't work for you in the beginning might be your biggest coping tool later down the road. So I think just keep trying things, really trying to set out like specifically what works. When I feel this way, this is what helps me. And when I feel this way, this is what helps me. Because I think if we try to just overgeneralize our coping skills and then we get frustrated because we're feeling anxious and it's not working, but it worked when I was feeling sad yesterday. I think that can be really frustrating. And then people get stuck in like or at least I know I do, get stuck in like, oh no, my skills aren't working. What am I going to do? Like, I don't have anything else. So I think just continuing to try different things and really kind of playing around with what helps in what states.